Good evening, everybody. You are here in the next online GP's Cafe. Today, we are discussing about a very interesting topic, a child affected by an evil eye. And to discuss this, we have a young general practitioner with us, Dr. Manoj Liyanage. Dr. Manoj graduated from University of Sri Jayewardenepura, and he earned his MCGP very recently. He is a primary care physician, of course, because he is the medical officer in charge of Divisional Hospital Kiriporua, a small hospital in Ratnapura district. And also he is having his evening practice in a place close by. So we invited him to be the storyteller today on behalf of the Spice Route Movement of Sri Lanka and the College of General Practitioners of Sri Lanka. I would like to welcome Dr. Manoj Liyanage, today's storyteller, as well as all of you who has joined from Sri Lanka and also from other South Asian countries to the GP's Cafe. Actually, the second GP's Cafe for this month of August. So let's listen to this interesting story about a child affected by an evil eye. Over to you, Manoj.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Dr. Sankar Andanikumar, for the kind words of introduction. And also, thank you very much for the invitation to present in today's GP's Cafe. I should especially thank Dr. Sankar Andanikumar, the regional chair of Spice Route Movement, for his encouragement to present in this forum. I am sure that you all are eagerly awaiting for the case discussion. But before I proceed with the case, I think I should introduce the area of my practice so that you can have a better understanding about today's case. As you already know, I work as a medical officer attached to Divisional Hospital Kiriporua, which is situated in a rural area in Ratnapura district. I also work as a part-time general practitioner, and my practice is located closer to the hospital. And most of my clients are people from nearby villages, and some are estate workers. Then let's move to the case. I got this child on 10th January this year. She's PDN, 5 years old girl, accompanied to my practice with her mother. And she presented to me with 2 days history of fever. She also had some blistering and wounds on her right leg, and she also complained of body chill. The mother was worried that there was something evil going inside her child. Before this incident, she had 2 episodes of fever within last 2 weeks. About 2 weeks ago, she had episodes of fever, which is most likely due to a viral infection, and it was settled with GP treatment. About 1 week back, she again developed fever, and at that time, she had developed blistering in right leg. And her mother complained that she also had swelling in her right groin. And at that time also the fever settled with a GP treatment. In this episode, she had fever since the previous day evening. It was high fever associated with chills, but there was no rigors, and it was poorly responded to paracetamol. Because of the COVID-19 risk, when a patient came to my practice, I specifically asked about COVID-19 exposure history, but she had no high risk of COVID-19 exposure. And she also had no respiratory symptoms and no exertional dyspnea. On inquiry, she had blistering and wounds over her right leg, which was persisted for about 1 week. And she had inguinal swelling also. She had generalized body itching and she had no headache, but she complained of generalized body aches. She denied nausea and vomiting, but her mother complained that her oral intake was poor. She had no abdominal pain and her bowel habits were normal. Her mother denies any urinary symptoms and claimed that her urinary output is normal. About in the past 2-3 months, she was lethargic, and mother claimed that she had excessive hair loss also. Weight gain was poor since she was 2 years of age, and mother denied any past hospital admissions due to any infection. Her past medical history and past surgical history are insignificant, and she didn't have any allergies. She was born by a normal vaginal delivery with a birth weight of 6.7 kilos. And her development was age appropriate and she was vaccinated appropriately. This genogram depicts her family history, and her father was a 33-year-old carpenter who was educated up to grade 5, and her mother was a 31-year-old rubber tapper who was educated up to grade 11. She had 2 elder sisters. The problem is her elder sister had several episodes of syncopal attacks. She was investigated heavily and they suspected it was due to some sort of pseudoseizures. But the mother had not got any definitive answer for her elder daughter's problem. They even sought the help of witch doctors. In this context, when her younger daughter also began to get sick frequently, she had invariably gone into witch doctors. They sought the help of witch doctors to expel the supposed evil spirits from the child. So, from the audience, was there any evil thing going on inside this child from the history?
I think it's an infection. With
She
that,
had
yes.
several episodes of fever over the past 2-3 weeks.
Yes, but that groin lump,
Yes.
I think it's a lymph node.
Yeah.
So, and that blistering may be related to the infection.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, the floor is open for discussion, and if you cannot unmute and talk, you can even type it on the chat box.
Yeah, as Dr. Supun mentioned, I also thought of infection. So with that in mind, I went with the examination. On examination, the child was ill-looking. She was thinly built and she had very weird appearance. She had very shortly trimmed hair, which was scanty. And she had worn an amulet with several sacred threads, probably given by those witch doctors. She had a gray patch over the scalp. I could clearly see those patch because she had trimmed hair, and over the patch there was some fine scaling. And on her right leg, she had several ruptured bulli, but there was no signs of cellulitis. Those bulli were covered with crust. So probably healing bullous impetigo. The gray patch also suggestive of dermatophyte infection Tinea capitis. She was febrile, and I could notice congenital pallor. because she had worn a mask, I didn't notice marked pallor at that time, and she had bilateral inguinal lymphadenopathy. Actually, I palpated the right-sided groin area, but her mother pointed out that the other side also there was some swelling. So she had bilateral inguinal lymphadenopathy. And also she had bilateral cervical lymphadenopathy, especially markedly in posterior triangle. She was tachycardic with a pulse rate of 142, and her blood pressure was normal. She had no cardiac murmurs, and her capillary fill time was less than 2 seconds. Her lungs were clear, and her saturation is 100% without oxygen. So the child got high-grade fever, not responded to paracetamol, and she had some degree of generalized lymphadenopathy. So I could not find any specific focus for the fever. So she need further assessment and probably further investigations to identify the cause for that lymphadenopathy. I asked the mother whether she can get a specialist opinion, but she was reluctant to go to the teaching hospital Ratnapura, the major hospital in our district, because of the COVID-19 fears, and she was not in a position to afford those investigations in the private sector, as she had already spent a lot of money for those witchcraft acts. So as I worked in a divisional hospital Kiriporua, I asked that whether it's suitable for her to admit the child to divisional hospital Kiriporua. With her concurrence, I admitted the child to hospital at the same day evening.
Manoj, at this moment, you can ask the audience whether there are any other thoughts about the condition.
Yeah, sure.
Because now you have done examination as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
So anyone from the audience, are there any thoughts about the child's condition?
Still the infection is high up in the list.
Yeah.
It can be recurrent, and the tinea infection and everything suggests that, and pallor, maybe child is having poor nutrition.
Yeah.
So also malignancy we should consider.
Yeah.
Because of their cervical lymphadenopathy also, and pallor, they can have fever also.
Actually, at my practice, I could not complete the examination because the restrictions due to COVID-19. She had worn a mask, and I could not examine the throat properly. And so after admitted to the hospital, I carried out an intensive examination. Her weight was 13 kilograms, which was below the -2 SD, and height was 105 centimeters, which was below -1 SD, and her BMI was 11.8. Her BMI for age was less than the first centile for the girls age 5 years in that CDC chart. She had some clinical features of some degree of dehydration. She had pale lips. Her bilateral ears are normal, and throat was also normal. She had no neck stiffness, and on examination, she had some degree of petechial rash over her chest and abdomen. At the initial examination, I could detect cervical and inguinal lymphadenopathy. After the second examination, I could detect axillary lymphadenopathy also. And she had some hepatosplenomegaly also. As there were some petechial rash, I examined other bleeding manifestations. She had no hemarthrosis or gum bleeding. With these examination findings, I asked some other questions from the mother. The mother had noticed pale colored lips for several weeks, but she thought that it was insignificant. And she had no gum bleeding or other bleeding manifestations. She denied any orthopnea or generalized body swelling, and there's no history of toxin exposure to toxins, chemicals, radiations, or long-term drug treatment. As the differential diagnosis goes on malignancies, I specifically asked about family history of hematological malignancies or autoimmune diseases, but she denied those. And with these findings from the history and examination, I ordered full blood count and UFR and CRP because I work in a resource poor setting. Those are the only investigations I can carry out. Until the investigations results are available, these are the management done in our hospital. She was given paracetamol, antihistamine, and an oral antibiotic, and ketoconazole cream for the tinea capitis. And as she had some degree of dehydration, we corrected it with IV normal sodium bolus and oral rehydration solution. In the following day morning, we could get down those investigation results. These are the investigation summary. From the audience, can you point out the abnormalities in these investigations?
Yeah, CRP is very high.
Yeah.
Then low HP.
Mm-hmm.
And there's neutropenia with lymphocytosis.
Yeah.
Low platelets.
So she had severe neutropenia with an absolute neutrophil count of 0.25 and thrombocytopenia, as well as low red cells with a hemoglobin level of 5.5. So she had pancytopenia with high CRP. So what could be the diagnosis?
Hematological malignancy comes up now.
Yeah. And CRP?
Yes. Maybe she's having a hematological malignancy, and on top of that, she's having an infection.
Yeah, exactly. With her clinical history and examination findings and the investigation results, I also thought of hematological malignancy due to her age. I thought of ALL because it's the commonest malignancy in childhood. So with that in mind,
Manoj, in the chat box, there's another answer telling autoimmune. It could be autoimmune as well, right? Yes, and
yeah.
Right, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Yeah. With that in mind, I referred her to teaching hospital Ratnapur for specialist opinion as well as to investigate her further. I have to break the bad news about the mother that her child might have some sort of serious issue, and her child needs further blood test and other tests And with her concurrence, I transferred her to Teaching Hospital Ratnapura. And on the following day morning, the registrar from the pediatric unit contacted me over the phone, and he thanked me for the referral and said that they have also thought of ALL and requested blood picture. Until the blood picture results are available, they have done some basic investigations. These are the investigation findings. The first day full blood count results are also confirmed the results I got with pancytopenia. And they are also CRP value is markedly elevated. And they have done dengue antigens and antibodies because she had fever with thrombocytopenia, all were negative. And her basic investigations were normal, other than the elevated SGPT level. They have done a chest X-ray, which was normal, and a USS abdomen, and it was revealed that she had hepatosplenomegaly. On clinical examination, I could not detect spleen enlargement, but on ultrasound examination, she had both hepatomegaly and splenomegaly. And the next day morning, they have got down these are the management summary in Teaching Hospital Ratnapura, because of low hemoglobin level and low platelet level, they have transfused her with leukoreduced red cells, and platelet transfusion also done, and they have given IV tranexamic acid to prevent bleeding manifestations, and they have started IV cefotaxime and gentamicin after the cultures. Next day morning, they also got down the blood picture, and these are the blood picture findings. The smear findings are compatible with acute leukemia, most probably acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and coexisting neutropenic sepsis features are also there. And there were more than 90% of abnormal blast cells. So the blood picture also suggestive of hematological malignancy, most probably acute lymphoblastic leukemia. For the further management of this malignancy, they have referred her to Apeksha Hospital. So I have some points about leukemia. Leukemia represents about 8% of all malignant disease. There are about four types of subsets of disease. In acute leukemia, there is uncontrolled proliferation of partially developed white blood cells called blast cells, which build up in the bloodstream in a short time. When pluripotent stem cells differentiate in the lymphoid lineage and arrested in blast cell stage, it can give rise to ALL. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia is the most common malignant disease in children, and it represents about 70% of all childhood malignancy. But it can also develop in adults. Unfortunately, the older that one gets, the more challenging it is to achieve a complete cure of the disease. As you can see, it is strongly believed that the first mutation causing this leukemia starts in utero, before the child has even been born. Now, when leukemia develops, it tends to present with lymphadenopathy, especially in cervical and axillary, and also inguinal lymphadenopathy. And also the clinical features of bone marrow failure. Because the blast cells crowd out the normal bone marrow function, normal blood cells are not made. Due to that, patient can get anemic, So they are tired and lethargic, and due to neutropenia, they are prone to infections. And due to diminished production of platelets, they can have bleeding manifestations such as spontaneous bruising, hemorrhagia, bleeding of gums, and nosebleeds. The diagnosis of ALL is made by a number of investigations. Obviously, history and examination play a vital role, and in ALL, blood film shows blood cells. From the bone marrow biopsy, also blood cells can be detected, and from immunophenotyping, can be used to identify the protein expression on the tumor cells. And also genetic analysis is useful to identify the specific genes which have become damaged. Both immunophenotypic and cytogenetic analysis can be used to subclassify the ALL, and also it can be used to identify the prognostic indicators. These are the risk factors in ALL. In immunophenotyping, CD10 positivity is a good prognostic factor. And the cytogenetic analysis, the translocation of chromosome 9 to 22, that is called Philadelphia chromosome, it is a poor prognostic factor. And as I mentioned earlier, the younger the child, the better the prognosis. These are the summary of treatment modalities for the ALL. The treatment of ALL is getting better, but it's really very complex and it involves blocks of chemotherapy, even for 2-3 years. The initial chemotherapy is very important and it must be given quickly. It seeks to kill off the great majority of tumor cells within the patient and achieve a normal blood count. It is called remission induction. But that's not enough to cure the tumor because there are many tumor cells remaining within the body. And therefore, further courses of intensive chemotherapy should be given to remove more and more of remaining tumor cells. It is called consolidation therapy and is given as intensive blocks of combination chemotherapy. Finally, less intensive treatment can be given for 1 to 2 years as maintenance therapy. Around 85% of children can expect long-term cure through these treatments, and the number is increasing every year as new regions and new combinations of treatment are brought into therapy. But unfortunately, in adults, the outcome is not so good, particularly as people get older. These are the drugs used in treatment of ALL. They are using steroids, vincristine, and some other cytotoxic medications. And I mentioned earlier, most children can achieve long-term cure with this treatment regimen. But sometimes the patients do relapse. So they may need high intensity chemotherapy, and sometimes they need bone marrow transplantation also. Coming back to the child, at Opecha Hospital, she had undergone a bone marrow aspiration, and that also revealed acute lymphoblastic leukemia. They have carried out immunophenotyping, which was positive for CD10 antigen, and it was a good prognostic factor. And her Philadelphia chromosome also negative, which also a good prognostic factor. So after several months of intensive chemotherapy, now she is on these medications. And with these medications, her blood counts are getting better, but she could not achieve a complete cure of her condition up to date. So from this case discussion, what are the points we can gather as a GP? The forum is open for the audience.
Yeah, if I'm Buddhika here,
Yeah.
if a mother comes and telling for a GP that that is ALL and getting treatment from the Apeksha hospital, as GP, the family physician, what are the advices you can give?
There are several
On chemotherapy.
advices we have to give in a patient with ALL as well as child with malignancy who is getting treatment from the Apeksha hospital, especially in these days, because of the COVID-19 risk. Whenever the child at each time the child had to admit to hospital, they have to carry out several PCR tests from both the child and the mother, and it was very troublesome. So if we don't give proper advice to the mother, they might get default. So we have to advise about the importance of those treatment, getting the treatment. At space, sometimes when child get side effects due to treatment, especially from chemotherapy and radiotherapy, they can get defaulted and go to alternative treatment methods sometimes for those witch doctors. So we have to educate about the side effects of the
Also, Dr.
treatment.
Manoj, I think when they are in maintenance, I think they have to do monthly full blood counts, and so they will come with the report to the GPs always.
Yeah.
So if there are any problems, then we have to refer them back to Apeksha hospital, I think.
Yeah.
HB.
So may I add something, Buddhika? Because I'm working in Apeksha Hospital Pediatric Oncology for the past 10 years. And so I have enough experience with this. So as a GP, what we have to do is if these mothers are, we have to encourage mothers to continue this treatment, right? As a GP, because with this treatment, there are a lot of side effects are there. Time to time, we are sending, because this treatment for 2 years, and we are sending them at home, and they more prone to get Ayurvedic treatment after that. Or else they will, the father will say now, because with the induction chemotherapy, after first 2-3 doses, they became normal. Then father said, we have enough examples like Apeksha. They are saying now child is okay, no need to go further treatment. So they interrupt that. So we have to encourage them to come and have the treatment, continuous treatment. That is very important. And after getting this leukemia, this is not the end of life. There are more than 80%, because in Apeksha Hospital we have 4 pediatric wards, and with 4 qualified pediatric oncologists, subspecialty of oncology. It's a very good management is there. So therefore, our success rate is more than 85%. So we have to give assurance to them. And the main side effects is the febrile neutropenia, and the sepsis and death is the most common. So therefore, when during maintenance and at home, also during hospital stay, also we have to ask mothers about. We have to educate about febrile neutropenia. That is an infection. How to limit the visitors, daily bath, and the neutropenic diet. And if there is any small fever or child is not clinically well, and checking the full blood count in intensive chemotherapy time, weekly full blood count is mandatory. And those things we have to give advice. A bit complicated, but as a GP, and what else you can give for the family? They will ask whether they have if they have going to be another child, will they get this leukemia? What is the answer for that?
there's some, I think there's some genetic predisposition also, but as I have
No,
read,
no,
in
there's no.
identical twins, there's increased risk of both twins to get ALL, but after that, there's no much increased risk for the other child to get ALL.
We have to advise mother, like if the one child, if there's only child getting ill like this, and he will be okay, but to as a support for that, to have another child, that child won't be any ill with this disease. Because even the Philadelphia positive, it is not inherited one. It is a change occurs after. Only that particular child have affected, not the others. So there's no, but we are giving advice is there's no, it's running through the family, it's a genetic. Without any fear, they can have another child, and it's a benefit for this ill child to look after one fine day if he gets some residual disease, to look after that and to complete the family. And the other children who are at home, I have to give advices. It won't. They thought that this can contagious like some things. There's no contagious like that. We have to give that assurance.
Right. Thank you, Buddhika, for those thoughts. I mean, you are experiencing that area, and as you are
Yeah,
working in the Updike
can
hospital as well. Thanks for that.
can you remember that there was a single film? I can't remember that name. There was a leukemic child, and he died, and that whole family get disturbed. Something like the Aradhana, ne? Is that the film? We told one. So with that, in our population, they thought this leukemia, if somebody get leukemia, that is the end of the story. Nothing. You can't help. No, there is a big cure rate. Actually, remission, the 1/3 will go into cure, the 1/3 can relapse. Then again, early relapse and late relapse there. The early relapse one, again, we can induce and use second line chemotherapy and get back, and advanced method like bone marrow transplant also there. But more than 80% we can cure. But they have to undergo a very difficult period for the first 2 years, like very vigilant about the infections. Shall we? Because I think it's. May I add, Sanka? Is it okay?
That's fine. That's fine because
What do you know
of course,
about? Now it's going to be my presentation. Like, what do you know about the neutropenic diet? It's very important as a GP to know about the neutropenic diet. That is the advice that we are giving them. Don't take any outside food. That means from the shops, this bitter roti rolls, even put no outside food, all cooked meals at home. And the meal should be cooked, not raw things like, salads, this polsambola, lunumiris, and what else? Mallung. Yeah, I'll come to that. So this mallung, we are not properly cooked. Mallung and the lunumiris we are not heating, and the salads and the polsambola, those foods we are not asked them to take because it's raw. And cooked meals, especially the meat and chicken, meat and fish, those things have to cook for a long period. Allow it to boil for a long period in a curry, because inside the bones there are some germs. They can easily grasp the infection, gastroenteritis and other things, because they are throughout neutropenic, these children. Because this is very supportive. The neutropenic diet is very supportive, because then the child stay out of infections throughout the chemotherapy period. Otherwise, they will get the infections like gastroenteritis, pneumonia, and they will die, and their chemotherapy going to be postponed. Then getting the chemotherapy in time is important to get a good remission. So if the infection comes, that chemotherapy, if the cycles are disturbed, then that also contributes in the ultimate outcome. So the free of infection is very important. So further about the neutropenic diet, So boiling cooked meals were allowed to allow it to boil more, this chicken and the fish and those things, meat products. And then if we take fruits, we are saying if we can peel off and have the fruits, these kind of fruits only allowed. Like this guava, the pera, veraluageva, those are not allowed. If you can peel off like bananas, pepper, mango, and those things are allowed to take after washing, peel off and have it in a very clean way. And also this, these oil cakes and sweets are not allowed, especially this talaguli. Because in talaguli, have you noticed that something in the middle, there's a white thing, that's a fungus. We are asked not to take any sweet things, especially these talaguli and oil cakes and these singular things, because they have some funguses inside. And that is about mainly neutropenic diet. And if they are taking cake and the biscuit and those things, not take it as ask them to directly take it from the manufacturer pack, the small packets, not to touch from anybody and keep it in a bottle for a period. In the loose, not to take from the. We have to ask from the manufacturer pack and take it directly from that. So those are the main points. And daily bath. And because these patients, children get a lot of constipation, so not allowed to have chocolate like constipating things, because they will get constipation with these drugs. And daily bath and limited visitors, less trouble to the child with the visitors, not to hug, go, and those things. And if they have any small now always we are using the mask, but earlier also we asked this type of patient, if even father or mother, to wear a mask, because they are highly infectious. So these things are contribute to get a good outcome from the things. As a GP, we have to advise, if we are getting a maintenance child, if there's a small change, small diarrhea or fever or little cough, better to seek medical advice and do the full blood count and CRP and see whether there is any infection going. Even neutropenia is the main problem during maintenance also, because these drugs are myelosuppressive. So those are the main things about the neutropenic diet. I think is very important.
Dr. Buddhika, thank you for the education. Just one question. If, as GPs, if we suspect infection, can we start antibiotics to these children without even doing the full blood count?
No. Better to send because if they come with the maintenance therapy or after some intensive chemotherapy, after 1 week, like they discharge from the hospital and have a rest at home for another week, and ask them to come. During that time, if they acquire infection, if they got a fever, or mother will come, the child is looking ill and not taking meals, even without fever. It's a severe neutropenia, they can't produce fever, because pyrogens are not producing severe neutropenia there. So first thing is, if clinically very bad, directly sent to the Cancer Hospital Maharagama, because ETU 24 hours there, and their special concern about pediatric cases, they will directly go to the pediatric unit, and our MOs, registrars, and the consultant always available, because MOs are directly contacting the consultant, not through the registrars. It's a discipline there. So they are very concerned. So better not to give antibiotics, but if we have fever or anything, we can do a full blood count and CRP and see. Mainly they present with a neutropenia. So anything pertaining to this, you can ask, because I'm a bit know about these things, managing.
Yeah, Arsha, do you have a question?
Anything? I'm sorry that am I disturbing to the main presenter?
No. This is
The inputs are very valuable.
Yeah.
Because this is the
No,
GP's
really.
cafe is meant to have disturbances
About this
and to have a discussion. It's a cafe.
hematological malignancy, I'm working pediatric oncology for 10 years. Another 3 years adult in oncology, hemato-oncology. Now in the bone marrow transplant unit for the past 3 years. 16 years experience like that.
So that's the idea of having the cafe, to have a
Yeah.
chat, and all these things
Anything
are
about
important.
hematological malignancy or Maharagama chemotherapy or regarding the leukemia, you can ask anything from me because it's a huge topic. I can take hours to talk about that. A few things that I mentioned, because especially the neutropenic diet is very important as a GP to know, educate the mothers. And the cleanliness is very important. No, not only child, daily bath. They thought sema තියෙනවනේ sema වගේ කැස්ස හින්දා නාන්නේ හොඳ නැහැ. No, there's a benefit. Sema නාලා sema හැදෙන්නේ එහෙම එකක් නැහැ. So the main thing is have a bath because cleanliness is improving. Otherwise, in the these folds in the skin, in the axilla, some germs are there, so they quickly get the infection. So daily bath, even with a cough, no problem. And mother also have to dress clean clothes and have a daily bath and those things. If somebody is ill or having sneezing or fever or anything, better not to visit the child even at home. So those are very important because they are very vulnerable. Most deaths and the failures are because of the infection, not any other things. If we can continue the treatment without any infections, the outcome is very good.
Is the flow cytometry done on ALL patient?
Of course, that the presenter maybe they are not very much. So main diagnostic investigation is it's a bone marrow biopsy. And have you heard this lymphoma and the leukemia? So the lymphoma, leukemia is the classification is an arbitrary classification. And if the lymphoma and the leukemia are present in the same way, but if the bone marrow infiltration of the blast cells is more than 20%, we take it as leukemia. And if it is less than 20% and lymph nodes are involved, then it's a lymphoma. The lymphoma are the lymph nodes. Somewhere in the lymph node, it is positive. Bone marrow, little infiltrator. That means less than 20. So it is then lymphoma. Towards lymphoma, there are different type of lymphomas. But if when it comes to leukemia, it is bone marrow infiltration. Lymph nodes are less involved. Spleen and the liver hepatosplenomegaly, but bone marrow is more involved. That is more than 20%. In this case, they said more than 90% involved. So that means it's a leukemia. So then the main diagnosis, morphological diagnosis. Morphological diagnosis is from the bone marrow biopsy. Blood picture is quite non-specific, but in the GP setting, because from the beginning of this presentation, I noticed that today also our MCGP lecture also we widely discussed this about the anemia lecture, because the good test to do in our GP practice is a blood picture. We can get so many things from the blood picture. Even dengue we can differentiate from a viral fever. So full blood count, CRP, dengue antigen is okay, but the blood picture is very important. If they would have done blood picture for this patient, we can get an early diagnosis. So the blood picture anyway, not give a specific diagnosis. Leukemia diagnosis given by bone marrow biopsy, but it is a morphological diagnosis. The accurate cell with the cell marker and the type of the leukemia, everything is going to be by flow cytometer. Flow cytometer is a quite huge machine. And they are giving a blood, some portion of the blood, it's diluted and mixed with different kind of reagents, some several test tubes. They will present it to this machine. Then the machine will have a gate. For the gate, according to the cells, weight of the cell, and it will cater to different cells according to their marker. That CD, you said CD10. CD10 is a marker of the cell. Each cell in our body have a marker. CD means a cluster differentiation. CD is a cluster differentiation. For example, CD4, CD8 in HIV we are talking about. Our stem cells are CD34. And the leukemic cells, B cells. Leukemia again divided into B and T. But here we are talking about, I think, B, not the T. So acute leukemia, the good prognostic sign is if they are CD10 positive. That is a marker of that leukemic cell is CD10. If the majority is CD10, it is a good prognosis. Why is that? Because it responding to chemotherapy. If CD10 absent, it is a bit difficult to, I mean, not that respondent to chemotherapy, then the remission is delayed. That's why I think it's a good prognosis. So flow cytometer is a bit advanced, but nowadays it's not that advanced. It's now like a UFR to Maharagama. So it is saying which type of leukemia, what are the markers. It gives all the prognosis of the leukemia and the diagnosis as well, but morphologically only by bone marrow biopsy. But we are taking sample for the flow cytometry either from blood or bone marrow, but the bone marrow sample is better. When we are doing the bone marrow aspiration biopsy, we take sample for the aspiration morphology and the trifine biopsy. Trifine biopsy, we are taking a part of a bone, and some part of some 2 ml or 3 ml, we are sending to the flow cytometer. But the flow cytometer ultimately giving the all correct picture about that. Am I answered the question about the flow cytometer? It is available, Maharagam.
Right. Thank you, Buddhika, for those very, I think, valuable thoughts you shared. Yeah, Manoj, yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, this then I can wind up the presentation. Because Dr. Buddhika gave a lot of valuable thoughts as he had this vast experience on this field. Maybe he would be a much better presenter on this topic than me.
No, it's
No,
not
that is-
about the topic. It's not about the topic, Manoj. You
Yeah,
got the
I want to
question.
share about my.
Yeah, exactly. The main idea of the cafe is provoking thoughts.
Any
So
other things
you-
you want to know about the prognosis? Actually, that presenter Manoj present about the prognostic signs of leukemia. You said the age is 2 to 9. It's a favorable age is 2 to 9. If it is less than 2, not good, and more than 9, again not good. 2 to 9 is a favorable age-wise. And male, female, there's no big difference. And when it's come to immune markers like CD30, CD10, and the B markers, because the ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, again divided into two, BALL and TALL. BALL is the commonest. I think the particular case is BALL. The TALL is bit rare. So the BALL, you will get, if it is a BAL, it's again a good prognosis. And when if you do the chest X-ray in this patient, the chest X-ray is normal, you said. If there's a mediastinal mass in the chest X-ray, then it is a poor prognosis, and most probably then it is going to be TALL than the BAL.
Due to thymus enlargement.
Thymus is always have some connection with the T cells, not the B, because the T cell differentiation in the maturation part somewhere in the thymus then come to the bone marrow. Therefore, it is TALL most probably, but not always. Sometimes B also there's mediastinal mass, and there's a good we are giving prednisolone in induction chemo. Before the induction chemo, we are giving pre-induction with only prednisolone. That is we are doing. One is the way of we want to treat, and other one to see the response. If the child is respond to the prednisolone, so that means he respond to the chemotherapy also very good. Therefore, prednisolone response is good, then it is a good prognosis. And other things you mentioned about the cytogenetic studies. Cytogenetic studies again divided into two. One is translocation detection. That is RT-PCR for translocation detection. Out of that, 922 translocation is very important. That is Philadelphia chromosome. If the Philadelphia positive, yeah, it is a bad for the ALL. But it is mainly dealing with CML. In adult CML, Philadelphia is very important. But in some certain amount of 20% cases of ALL also, there's a Philadelphia positive, then it is a poor prognosis. And the karyotyping. The second cytogenetic study is we are doing the karyotyping. The karyotyping, if there's a normal karyotyping with a 46XY0XX, good. If there is any additional or aberrant chromosomes in the karyotyping, then again a poor prognosis. So like that, there are some other. Anyway, there are 12 components to assess whether this prognosis is good or not. If I go more, I think it's going to be more advanced. So this is enough. And as a GP, I want to point out at this moment, giving steroids in our practice for these patients, initially or after that, because I was looking very attentively with your prescription, whether it's steroid is there or not. It will mask everything, right? If there is any suspicious, if you give some prednisolone or something, all lymph node and hepatosmear will disappear, and it masking effect. Then nobody can't find the disease. The diagnosis get delayed. So as a GP, we should remember, unless very sure cases like asthma or anything quite okay, like we can give steroids, but especially in children, if there's any suspicious, better not to prescribe steroids, will mask everything and delaying the diagnosis. And until go to the hospital, this type of patient, you can ask to have a lot of fluids. This child feed with have a lot of fluids, because their renal functions get affected with this leukemia initially, because these blast cells are destroyed and go to the kidney, and it gets stuck inside and get the renal failure, acute renal failure. So if you have a lot of fluids, then it is there. And this child present with the CRP, that means infection, because all 3 cell lines are gone. So anemia there, they gave blood. The thrombocytopenia, okay, gave platelet, but tranexamic acid, no place for there. Anyway, they gave that. But the neutropenia can cause all these infections. That's why CRP high. You have to give potent antibiotic. Until reaching the hospital, we can start something like Zinat, like good brand. And in the maintenance patients also, we are starting augmenting or Zinat-like thing until reaching the hospital. Because the early antibiotic is very important if you are thinking about the infection. So remember about the steroids, not to use steroids regarding this.
Okay, as a GP, Manoj, I think you had done it very correctly, because the patient was not with you at the first instance,
Yeah.
right? But as soon as you got her down, you followed up and continued care, and you diagnosed, and there was signs of shared care, and you helped them with empathy, coordinated. I think many of the principles and functions of family medicine have been exhibited and displayed in this encounter, I think, and it's commendable. And I think you did the basic investigation, even though they could not afford most of the investigation as Buddhika at all. If a blood picture would have been done, it would have been better. But then you did it by sending her quickly to the teaching hospital. Yeah. Even though your primary care institution didn't have that facility. So I think most of the principles of family medicine have been covered by you. I think we really appreciate your work, Hidayah. Any other thoughts, Manoj?
Yeah, I have some question to Dr. Buddhika regarding that neutropenic diet. What about milk and yogurt, milk products?
Sorry, I forgot. Milk and yogurt, in the hospital stay, we are not allowed. In the yogurt and milk products, we are prohibited. But at home, they can take, but pasteurized, the properly prepared milk after boiling. And the yogurt also, be careful about the, this expiry date and things. But if it is a properly prepared heated milk is okay. But if they have gastroenteritis, because they can get diarrhea, maybe at home in the hospital, and during that period, we are not allowed to have any milk. And the grapes, about the fruits, all the fruits they can have, they can wash it and peel off and have. The grapes are not that allowed because it has some liver enzyme inducing effect in the grapes. So most of the chemotherapy are interact with liver enzyme inducers. So we ask not to give grapes. Other fruits are okay. And when the potassium overload there initially, when the child presenting with the leukemia initially, better not to give fruits because potassium restricted diet only first few days. After that, okay.
Dr. Buddhika, there's a question in the chat
Yeah.
asking, is the flow cytometry in function these days at Maharagama?
At the moment, I think reagent problem all over the country, flow cytometers are not working except Maharagama one still working. That I know. The last week I know our one is we are getting sample from other places also. It is working still because very expensive reagents have to get down for this flow cytometer studies. Now, Sanka, I want to Sanka.
Yeah.
One thought to the GP cafe. You know, like being a medical officer there in the cancer hospital, I know like most of the things about this oncology and hemato-oncology, what GP should do, because I'm working there. Not and another medical officer working in a neurology unit and another one working in a gene and ops unit. They know more than me about their territory as a GP. But when it compares to the GPs in other countries, Australia and the UK, they know every discipline like I know the oncology or hemato-oncology to that extent. So we have to improve that each discipline, that some knowledge from the like that, like I know about the oncology and hemato-oncology, like from the neurology, gene and ops, and like if we can discuss this in future in the GP cafe, because we have a lot of medical officers doing part-time GP. So I think it's a good one to share each other knowledge. What do you think about that? That's what happened today, I think.
Yeah, it's volunteering. It's all about volunteering, Buddhika. Now we can't. I mean, this now, for example, Manoj volunteered. Almost all the people who present here volunteer. So if someone volunteers in that, yes, of course. The thing is, sometimes it's very difficult to get down people who have the knowledge, but then they wouldn't volunteer. So that's a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So
that's the thought.
that's the thing. So the thing is, now when we have a wider forum, there could be people. Now, for an example, I remember that previously we had something about one of our GP's cafe. There was some good discussion on radiological findings because there were some medical officers working in radiology units.
Yeah, that's
so invariably. I think, and invariably, there are people who work in different disciplines.
Yeah.
So with that, I think some fortunate. I think there's something is also there. We are fortunate to hear from them. So yeah, if someone is interested and we could get down someone like that, that would be, I think, good. Anyway, thanks for being here today, both of you. So for having a very thought-provoking talk by an interesting, very interesting talk by Manoj, and having making it more and more fruitful by Buddhika with your experience. So thank you very much. So I think we can call it a day. Thank you, Manoj, for that Manoj, for that very interesting presentation and for volunteering today. And I know that you haven't presented in many forums, but you did it very nicely today. Congratulations. So this is the
Thank you.
beginning of a, good, very good journey, probably. Right? I know that you are very dedicated and you are working in primary care. You have all the qualification to be a very good family physician. So congratulations
Thank
and
you.
best of luck for a very good future. And thank you very much, dear colleagues, friends, for being here with us for more than 1 hour. And let's meet with another GP's Cafe next month, probably in the first week of September. Have a nice week and goodbye.
Good night and stay safe.